If you have an engine that's new, just overhauled, or hasn't been used for 24 hours or more, you will need to pre-lubricate it before you start it. Pre-lube is a process designed to protect the precision engine parts during the time when the lube oil pump is filling the passages with oil. Some of Sedco's rigs have EMDs with a continuous pre-lube system that never shuts down. You'll need to check to see if this is the type you have. If it is, just check to see that it's working. If your EMD isn't automatic, then you'll need to do a pre-lubrication of the engine. If you're pre-lubing your engine, what you're actually doing is manually pumping oil from the crankcase through an external pump and into the discharge line of the engine's lube oil pumps. This circulates oil through the normal oil channels. To do this, connect your pump into the oil line at the lube oil discharge elbow, located on the right of the main lube oil and piston cooling oil pumps. Adjust the pressure until it reaches 10 pounds per square inch. Now, lubricate the engine for at least 3, but not more than 5 minutes. Open your top deck cover and check for oil flow on the camshaft and rocker arm bearings. Then, open your oil pan handhold cover to check for oil flow on the crankshaft bearings. While you're letting the engine pre-lube, you can use your cylinder test valve wrench to open all the test valves located along the top of the airbox. After you open all the valves, you'll need to crank the engine over manually for one complete turn. As the engine is being turned over, check for fluid being discharged at the cylinder test valves. A little condensation, like this mist you see here, is okay, but any fluid ejected from the test cocks will have to be checked out before you start the engine. If water is being ejected, you could have liner or head leak. If it's fuel oil, then the problem could be the injector. You need to check one more thing before you finish your pre-lube inspection. On turbocharged engines, check your soakback pump to be sure it's functioning. This can be checked by removing an oil pan handhold cover at the rear of the engine and checking to be sure that lube oil is draining into the oil pan from the gear train. If no oil is draining, the pumps aren't on. After you've done this, you can disconnect the outside oil source and replace the pipe plug at the pump discharge elbow. You want to make sure that you've checked the engine completely and have taken care of any problems you found. When you're satisfied that all is okay, go ahead and replace your handhold covers. Lower the top deck covers and close all the cylinder test valves. The engine is ready to start. Well, that's about all there is to a pre-lube and pre-start inspection. Now you need to make a few final checks before you start the engine. This part of the program will go over the steps needed to start up the engine, as well as all the checks you'll need to make once it's started. The first thing you need to do is check the engine coolant level. If your coolant level is low, then you need to check out your cooling system and make necessary corrections before you proceed. You can tell how much water is in the tank by looking at the sight glass next to the tank. If it needs water, be sure to add it to the right level on the sight glass. There are markings for the water while it's cold and for when it's hot. After you've got it filled, be sure to replace the fill cap and screw it on snugly. If this red water warning light on the front panel ever goes on, don't just refill the tank, but check for where the loss is occurring. Shut the engine down until you've got the problem fixed. Next, check the starting air pressure. It's indicated on this pressure gauge. For all 8, 12, and 16 cylinder engines, the starting air pressure should be 120 to 150 pounds per square inch. This one's ready to go. The 20-cylinder engine will need 200 pounds per square inch. Be sure to drain any condensation from the air lines before the air motors are engaged. Now you need to climb down to where the air lubricator is located so you can make sure it has the right oil flow and that there is oil in the reservoir. Open the valve about 1.5 turns. This will let about 3 drops of oil per minute into the incoming air of the engine for startup lubrication. You should use 10-weight oil in the lubricator. If the exhaust air shows excessive oil, just reduce the flow. And another oil level check. Pull the cover on the lube oil strainer. It should be full. If it's not, fill it. Now go back over to the side of the engine so you can check the lube oil level. When the engine is stopped, the oil level should register a little above the full mark. When the oil is hot and the engine is idling, the level should be somewhere between the full and low marks. Be sure to recheck the oil level after the engine is at operating temperature. Also, check the governor oil level gauge. It's a sight glass on the side of the governor. The oil level will rise after the engine is started. Next, open the engine cooling water valve to the heat exchanger. And then check the overspeed trip lever near the camshaft front end to make sure it's latched in the reset position. Prime the fuel pump with the manual pump. And make sure your day tanks have plenty of fuel in them. Now you're finally ready to start the engine. In order for your engine to start, your control cabinet power has to be on. This is indicated by the green Power On light on the front. Set the governor to the idle position. There's a red governor low limit light here. Now press and hold the engine start push button. When the fuel pressure reaches 8 pounds per square inch, the starting magnet relay will release air to the starting motors and the engine will turn over. The elapsed time indicator will begin to count hours of operation. Once the engine starts, release the button. Allow the engine to run at idle speed for 3 minutes or until the jacket water reaches a minimum of 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Then use the governor speed control to bring the engine up to speed. This will cause the low limit light to go off. The engine will be slowly brought up to speed. When it gets there, the high limit light will come on. Inspect the fuel sight glass after the engine gets up to rated speed. If you see air bubbles, you've got a bad injector. Compression air is being forced back through the injector and into the fuel lines. It'll have to be replaced. After the engine is warmed up, you'll need to give all your temperature and pressure gauges a thorough check. Record them in your EMD engine log. Make note of the elapsed hours that the engine has run. You should be aware of the alarms that are included on the engine panel. They are hot engine. This could mean your heat exchanger is not open, possible loss of coolant. Lube oil pressure, possibly low oil level, a suction leak, or a bad oil pump. Overspeed tripped, could be a stuck injector rack or a sudden loss of load. Crankcase pressure, check to see if airbox pressure is leaking into oil pan. Lube oil level, check the oil supply. Water level, could be a leak in the coolant system. High oil temp, possibly a hot engine or an oil cooler restriction. Soakback oil pressure, check out soakback pump. Remember, if any of these lights come on, it's important to check out the problem area immediately. If your EMD is equipped with an automatic start sequence, there are a couple of things we've gone over you won't have to do. But you'll still have to do your pre-start inspection. You still have to apply control power. Latch down the overspeed trip lever and set the governor to the idle position. This is all you need to do, except push the start button. When you do this, the automatic sequence takes over. The fuel pump will be energized so that fuel is pumped through the system. When you start the engine, the idle time relay will keep the engine idle for about 2.5 minutes. The relay will then kick over and operate the unit at the governor's high limit. Then your EMD is ready to do its work. When stopping the EMD, Use the governor control switch to bring the engine down to idle speed for 15 minutes. You do this to cool down the engine. Now press the stop button. The governor solenoid will cut the engine fuel supply and reduce the engine speed to the point of shutdown. If you have an automatic unit, it'll have a remote emergency stop, which will energize the governor's solenoid and shut the engine down within the 15-minute cool-down period at idle speed. On turbocharged engines, when the engine shuts down, be sure the soakback pump is running. It should run for 15 minutes after engine shutdown. Now we've shown you how to pre-lube, start, and shut down the EMD. Let's recap the important points to remember. Pre-start inspection and lubrication. Pre-lube at 10 pounds per square inch for 3 to 5 minutes. Open cylinder test valves, top deck cover, and handhole covers. Manually bar engine over. Check for discharge at test valves and free oil flow at crankshaft, camshaft, and rocker arm bearings. Close valves and covers. Pre-start sequence. Check air pressure, water level, air lubricator, and strainer housing. Check oil in crankcase and governor in both normal and cold conditions. Make sure overspeed trip is latched. Prime the fuel pump. Check for adequate fuel supply. Start sequence. Supply control power to cabinet and be sure no warning lights are tripped. Press and hold the start button until the engine is running. Let the engine idle for 3 minutes, then set the governor to bring it up to rated speed. Shutdown sequence. Remove the load and let the engine idle for 15 minutes to cool before shutdown. After the engine shuts down, be sure the soakback pump is running. It should run for 15 minutes after engine shutdown. Okay, that's your pre-start inspection and startup procedure. If you're about to start the engine up for the first time, be sure to get the master mechanic to check you out on it. Do it right, and maybe you won't have to do that power assembly replacement quite as often.